going on, everybody? My name is Jason. I work at All Out Bikes in Four Oaks, North Carolina, and every day for the month of December I'm going to be pulling bikes out from my personal collection. They're going to be collectible bikes, they're going to be rare bikes, or just plain unique. So be sure to subscribe to see what comes next. Today's bike of the day is this 1972 Lambert of England. Now, if y'all haven't heard Lambert of England, go ahead and Google it and see what comes up. And I can almost guarantee you that the first thing that's going to come up is the death fork. What you have here is you have a very well-made bike. We'll cover that, but see, on this bike right here, they made a cast aluminum fork that actually tapers down to the bottom, and then it swoops out to allow for some flex to make the ride smoother. Well, I don't know what the engineers were thinking, because aluminum doesn't like to flex over and over again. In fact, aluminum hates it, and aluminum breaks. So there were no known deaths from this fork, but there were many injuries. People be riding along and all of a sudden tink, and next thing they know, they're waking up in the hospital because their face has made contact with the concrete. So now a little bit of history on this bike. Lambert here, they decided that they wanted to make an absolutely amazing bike for as cheap as possible. And the way they were achieving this was they were making almost everything in-house. The frame is made out of a special stainless steel that, from what I understand, and I could be wrong on this, the formula that they use to make the tubing is long gone. They don't know what it's made out of. Try to look on this bike. There's scratches everywhere. Try to find a rust spot, and I dare you to find one. Zika, however, he found a couple of stains in the paint that could be rust, probably is, but it could be just some staining, because you look at all these other places where the paint has chipped down to the metal, and there's no rust even starting. So the tubing that this is made out of, I showed Zeke. What'd you think of the thickness of that tubing?
It's impressively thin.
It's incredibly thin. And these frames, I've never heard of any of these frames failing. It's actually a very light bike. And it's even lighter with half an aluminum fork. So the other things that's going on with this bike, in 1972, they were putting sealed bearing in these hubs. So this bike rolled very good. This was a very fast bike. You had a sealed bearing bottom bracket. They actually made these cranks in-house. The pedals here were made in-house, and the really incredible thing on these pedals is they're needle bearings. Just all the stuff about this bike is just incredible. It was a very ahead of its time bike that, unfortunately, they made a mistake. And the mistake was trying to design everything and making it in-house. What they should have done is they should have gone with Tongay on the forks, a manufacturer that did an awful lot of forks. And they were selling the Lamberts with the Lambert name, but with Tongay forks, because Lambert ended up losing their shirt over this bike. The handlebars on this, it has a really cool, real pretty, what would you call this? I think it's kind of a gusset, like shim.
Crest looking.
Yeah, it's a very ornate shim here to kind of take up the space. It's supposed to be like 26 millimeters, but the handlebars are like 22.2. Probably not 22.2, but what happens is, what they did was they put this gusset on here, and Then they drilled a couple of holes in the handlebar, and they put some rivets in here. And you don't want to drill holes in the handlebar because guess what? It can start to crack. And if these handlebars start to crack, the crack is underneath this little shim, this little gusset, and you can't see when the handlebar is about to separate. So there's that. Really cool brakes, nice shifters. They made the front derailleur themselves. They used a simplex rear derailleur. That was another bit of a mistake on their part. Now, the simplex derailleur actually did work very well. However, these derailleurs now, if you try to mess with them, the plastic has gotten so brittle that it breaks. Avocet seat, which was very comfortable. Overall, like, this bike is a really, really cool bike. It's a very nice 10-speed. It's a bit of bike history. Like I said, do some research, read up on it, because it was a fascinating thing. Oh, they also had a 24-karat gold-plated bike. Now, I've got to ask you, with all this sealed bearing parts, sealed bearing bottom bracket, stainless steel frame with an aluminum breakaway fork, you know, how much do you think this bike was going for in 1972? I'll go ahead and tell you, this bike was going for less than $200. And the only thing that really put Lambert under was that fork from all the recalls and the lawsuits. That's what ended up putting too much pressure on Lambert, and they ended up having to sell. Other interesting things about this, since they made the crank in-house, this is a square crank. I almost said tapered. See, cranks like this, like Zeke are working on, this is a square tapered crank, meaning that the spindle is square and it gets a little bit larger as it goes in. So the more this crank arm goes on, the tighter it gets. These cranks, it's just a square tube and it's pressed on, and the moment it starts getting a little bit loose, it's never tight again. So that's a little interesting tidbit there. So check them out. If you have a chance to get one, just don't ride it if it's got the original death fork on there. If you do want to ride it, be sure to replace the fork on there. But I wouldn't ride these bikes just because they're interesting. They're outdated. You can actually buy a newer bike that rides far better, that's faster, more comfortable. Just hang it up in the garage. You know, check it out. It's interesting. It is a bit of interesting history. So anyway, if you enjoyed this, please leave me a big thumbs up. Don't forget to tell your friends. Check out some of the other videos on the corners of the screen. Don't forget to subscribe and tune in tomorrow on tomorrow's Bike of the Day. Thanks.